Okay, here we are live. I hope you can hear me okay. I've had to turn my notifications off on my camera, so I'm hoping that this is still working. You're still able to hear the sound. If not, somebody please let me know if you can't hear the sound. Is it coming through okay? See, a few people have just joined us. Thank you for joining us. Just let me know if you can hear the sound okay, will you please, before we begin. If you can't hear the sound, oh yes, you should be able to. You should be able to hear the sound. Right, okay. Right, okay. My name is John Silver. I'm a professional artist, and this week, live oil painting session, I'm going to be painting a hare for you. And this week, what I've done is I've put up the photo of the hare onto the Facebook channel, so my Facebook channel, so you can print it out, and if you want to paint along, please feel free to do so. This should take about an hour, possibly less. So let's see how we go. Here we go. Right, this is an oil painting on 10 by 8 canvas panel. Now, the way the image that I've uploaded is quite a colourful image, lots of greens and stuff in the background, but this is my interpretation of that photo. It's not a direct copy of that photograph. It's the same. I've changed the position of the ears, I've changed the structure of the body a little bit, so I'm altering it. I'm not slavishly copying it. So let's get cracking with a nice burnt umber background for this one. So we're just going to knock in a basic burnt umber background using burnt umber and a little bit of I'm using Neo Megilp as a medium, but you could use liquid. Hello Marjorie, thank you for joining us. So we'll just add a little bit more of that Megilp to the mix. So I'm just scrubbing this in. Doesn't have to be perfect, this, because I'm going to be going over it with a blender brush in a moment. So now so I'm just making sure all the canvas is covered. Make sure you get it into all the pores of the canvas. And then I'm going to get some more of the burnt umber, a little bit more straight now, not much in the way of medium, and just darken some areas now to give it a bit of form. I don't want a flat background tone, I'm going to give it a bit of a gradient. So we'll do the same down here. The liquid or the Megilp that I use just enables the paint to move around a little bit better and to help it dry a little bit quicker. So there we go, like that. Now we'll get a blender brush. Here's the blender brush. And while that's nice and wet, just start moving it around a bit. I want this area to be a little bit lighter, you see, over at this end. and then we can gradually bring that darkness there as it goes a little bit darker. Like so. Doesn't matter if you go over the lines, over your drawing. As long as you know roughly where your drawing is. So you can see how it's blended from the darkness to the light. That just gives it a little bit of interest. If it was a flat background, there would be no interest there whatsoever. So I'll just wash that brush out. So now then, now the colour of the hair is quite brown. It's an orangey brown. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit more of the Megilp, the medium, to the burnt umber, and just basically knock in a bit of a tone to it. So it will have an underlying burnt umber tone to it. I'm hoping this isn't going to fall off here. It's very, very... Oh, if it does, it does. Right. Okay. Now that's the way the fur is lying on there, and the ear at the back. Good evening, Rob. Thank you for joining us. So again, this is just basically to knock in a rough idea. We're going to start applying some darker areas. Very rough and loose at the moment. There's a bit of shading under there. Now remember, this is an interpretation, my interpretation of an image. Because you don't, if you get a photograph or whatever, you don't want to copy it exactly. You want to put your little stamp on it to make it yours. The fur would try and get your brush strokes in the direction of the fur. And I'll tell you what, we'll have this quite dark here, as if it's looming out of the background. Like so. Now we'll get a smaller brush now, because I just want to do lay in some dark areas which are dark around the eye, just laying in the darkest areas of the hair. So I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine to some burnt umber, just to give it tone it down and make it quite a dark, almost black colour. Right, so we'll pop in that part of the eye, the dark part. Again, I'm not using particularly fine brushes. This is an old thing that I've had knocking around for a while. You get used to certain brushes and you tend to pick those up most of the time when you're painting. They're familiar to your hand, but every now and again, every so often, those brushes wear out and you find yourself at a bit of a loss because you've lost your favourite brush. So you then have to get a new favourite brush. Right, so just putting in some of the darker areas, darker tones. So we don't have to be accurate, we're not trying to get every hair, pardon the pun, every hair of the hair. Like so. Now with that same brush, let's just wash it out. I'm going to get some of this, I've got some mixing white and a little bit of my ordinary white and a little bit of burnt umber. So a little bit of that medium in there to create an off-white. It's a browny grey white. And what I'm going to do here is just, not warm enough yet, let's add a bit more brown to it. These are going to be some lighter areas around the eye. There's a little bit of white fur around the eye. And that will change tone in a minute. We will adjust that. Let's go back to this brown here and just put some of this in. Some dark brown there, just to delineate the lower part of the lip. Right, let's wash that brush. Now I'm going to let's get a nice bristle brush. This is a nice cheap one. It's flat, it's cheap, cost about £1. Now then, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the lighter tone of this. I'm going to make it slightly more orange than the actual photograph, because the light, I want the light shining on it. So get some of that medium, we'll get some mixing white and a little bit of my warm white. And then let's have some of this yellow and some of this red, just to create an orangey colour, like so. And then we'll get some burnt umber and just tone it down a little bit, and we'll add some red to it, perhaps a tiny touch of yellow. Let's see what that's like. It's getting there, it's getting there. Right, so we have you see, because it's a rough brush, not a neat, tidy brush, it produces a nice rough, raw shape, raw marks. So that's going to be the top of that ear. like so. We have a light bit under there. Now I'm going to have the light shining, just being pulled out on this part of the hair. Again, you can make up your own lighting. If you know the rough form of an object, you can create your own lighting. I've always liked views where you have the light coming from behind an animal, and you get a nice lighter tone around the outside edges, and it makes the thing stand out. So we're just knocking a few of these. You see it's picking up a bit of the brown as we go along, this brush and the colour, like so. So it's fading it in nice and gently. Now in this ear we're going to have a little bit of pink. It's quite an orangey pink. So we will, where the light's shining through the ear. Like that. I'll tell you what we'll do now is we'll come down to a medium type of brush. This is a number 4 bristle brush. Now, the lighter areas I'm going to pick up, let me get some of this medium here, pick up some of this mixing white, and then some of my warm white, mix it together. Because the medium, the mixing white is an alkyd. So by adding some of that to my warm white, which is a lead white alternative, it'll make it dry quicker. Now I'm just going to take some of that out and bring in some of this orange. Only a little bit though, so it's nice and bright. Like so. Now I'm just going to pull up some of the edges of this. You've got to use the paint quite thick here. So around here, quite bright. Got a little bit of light under there, picking at the bottom of the chin, a tiny bit. Using the same brush, I'm not going mad by using small brushes. There's no need to use small brushes. While I've got the same colour, I'm just going to pop in a few highlights on this the light area around the eye and under this nose. And it sort of blends off into the muzzle. We have a little bit of white here. I can let the burnt umber pick up on those, on that light colour, so it just tones it down a little bit. And there's always a bit of light here on a hair, just along that edge of the nose. So there you go, you can see it's starting to take shape. But just by adding the highlights in. Now this ear has quite a bit of light to it. Very bright, it's picking up the light. And there's the same with the top of this ear here. It can be a bit more ragged. The same on the underside of this ear. We can just let that fade off a little bit there so it's not quite so light. Like so. Now here's my special effects brush, which is just a watercolour type of brush, flat. It says number 12. It's only cheap, but look at the way it splays. Lovely. And that will come into effect as you apply the paint. So I'll just dampen the brush slightly. We're going to get some of this dark brown, the burnt umber, quite liquid. And we're just going to start putting one or two little it splays and makes it look like you're painting lots of hair without actually using a small brush. This is the secret of a lot of artists, professional artists use, is make one large brush look like you've done the work with lots of little brushes when you haven't. This will become more prevalent in a minute when I go to the light, but I'm just putting in one or two little darker areas. Like so. Now we'll clean that off. Make sure it's dry, not too wet. Now we need to get some of this lighter tone. So we need to get some of this more orange, pinky orangey tone, and we're going to and just add a few little wisps of hair where the light's just catching it. Don't make it too uniform. We just need to get that a little bit lighter here, where the light's just picking up a little bit of the light there. Right, now we're going to get a little bit lighter with it. So I'll pick up some of that white. This may not be liquid enough, so we'll just add a bit of medium to it. So this is lighter now. Now on the edge. The bits where the light has been caught on the fur. We can afford to go a little bit lighter. These little bits here. You see how a brush like that can be very useful, making it look like you've done lots and lots of hair, and in actual fact you've just done a few strokes. Now while I've got this light colour, I'm going to get a nice bright pink and just add a couple of little marks in there where that light's just coming through that ear. Right, now then, now we go back to this little worn brush, and I'm going to get this orange colour that we mixed, sort of a medium tone orange. In fact, we can add a little bit of burnt umber to it, so it's not too bright. I'm just going to lay this in as the colour of the eye. Sometimes the eye of a hare can be very bright yellow, but I want that yellow just to stand out here and there, not all the way around it. So that's going to be dark. So what we'll do is just pick up some of that burnt umber now on the same brush, and we'll just soften the edge of that so it's not a hard edge. And we can do the same with the leading edge of the dark area. Just soften it. Because remember, it's fur, so you don't have it too much of a hard edge. While we've got that, we can put that back in there a bit more. We can start putting one or two little dots of where the paws, the darker little spots are, where the hair comes out of the muzzle. Right, now that eye needs brightening up now, so we're going to get a smaller brush and a lighter tone. So we'll get some yellow in there and a little bit of orange, a little bit of red. I'm using cadmium red, cadmium yellow, burnt umber and ultramarine, and a couple of whites, a mixing white and a warm white. Now we'll just add a little bit of colour to this, just on the leading edge. And the same on this side. So we can afford to go a little bit light with it. This might be too light, but let's try it. This helps to give the eye a little bit of roundedness and form. Like that. Now then, the mixing white and brown, which we have here, just going to lighten it up a touch, produces quite a nice warm grey. Now it's not white, it's just a warm grey. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a few little highlights here and let it fade off there. And the same here. Notice I'm not going off the eye of the photograph. We'll just have a little bit of a light area there. like so. That just needs a little bit of darker. It should be round, so we'll just take that off there. Like so. Now that warm grey we had for the light, we're now going to apply the highlights to that using white, pure white. And we'll add a little bit of a dot there, blend it out, and a little bit of a dot there, blend it out, like so. Hello Jerry, thank you for joining us. Right, now I'm going to get a little bit more of this white as a blob on the end of the paintbrush and blob it on, like so. There's little highlights, and we've got a little highlight here. We'll have one there. We'll go back to the grey and just lighten that up a little bit, because here there is a nice little eyelid ridge. Just there, like that. Right, now the yellow of the eye isn't bright enough, so we're going to get some nice bright yellowy orange. I want the eye to zing out. That's better. That's better. Right. Now we've got this bright brush here with the light on. We just need to get a little bit lighter. So we're almost going to pure white here. I'm pushing the paint in. I'm not painting it in. I'm pushing it in. That way you get the full effect of the brightness coming through. Same there. And while we've got this, we'll add a little bit of brightness to that and to this area down here. Now these are strokes of paint, these are not pushed in, because you're following the curve of the fur. So you want it to show really bright, you push it in like that. Okay, there we go. Hello Tony, thank you for joining us. Right, now while we've got that like this, I'm going to show you another little trick now. Now I've shown you this before with a metal implement, but I'm going to show you a trick now with a brush, paintbrush. What you do is you take the handle of the brush and you cut it. You trim it. Trim the brush like this with a knife till you've got a nice point to it. Doesn't have to be sharp. And just trim this up a bit. It isn't sharp. It's not sharp, but it becomes a tool, which is brilliant for fur. Or for fur. For fur. And what we do with this, you could use a very, very thin brush for doing this, by the way, but because I've got a warm background, I've painted my background pink and then I painted over the top. You can just scratch a few hairs coming out. Let me just sharpen this up a little bit. It's just not quite, using a Stanley knife, so I won't do this in front of the camera because you can't. I don't want to get any of this flakes on the painting. So you can make it as sharp as you like, really, as pointed as you like so. Okay, hello Michelle. So now with that pointed end of a paintbrush, just add a few. Remember, hares are very, well, they're mad, aren't they? Mad as a March hare. So try and show that in the fur is all over the place on a hare. It can be very straggly and wild. So you need to show that. So we have some. Can you see that? How it produces the whiskers. Right. Random. Some of them go in a lot in the same direction, but others come out random. Now we can start to put in some hairs that are random in here as well. In fact, you can do, and I have done, an entire painting like this using this technique. Maybe that's another one that I shall show you how to do. So you see it produces a nice soft edge using a brush. It's because it's wooden, you see. Now if I go over to my metal tool, this will produce a sharper edge, and as a result will go deeper into the canvas and make it look brighter, so you can do some brighter hairs, depending on how hard you scratch, of course. So there. It's a wild hare. Not a rabbit, it's a hare, so it's wild. It's not a pet rabbit. So we have some. There we go. Now, how long have we taken to do that? 40 minutes. I think we're just about done. Just about done. I mean, you can do this forever and ever. You can do lots and lots of scratching and lots of work, and you can paint over the top, and then you can do some more scratching. You can just, however you want to do it, however long. You can do things like delineate these lines a little bit better. Do it until you think you've done. And I think I've just about done. So down here, using the same tool, I'm sanding it. Right, while we're at it now, let's get this light brush, and we'll get a nice it's a small brush. We'll just get some white on there, or off-white, just for a little highlight in there, and just bounce it along there. It doesn't have to be a perfect line, just bouncing around. Let's get some white. Just the lights just picks up there, so one or two little spots there. We'll just bring that up. You can do little adjustments now. You see, you can just adjust things as you go along, and if necessary, you can do some more scraping. I just want a little bit of light here. Let's get some more of this white, mixing white added to it. Make it dry quickly. There you go, one hair. Of course you can, there's one more thing, if you use a rigger brush to do the whiskers, you can pull up some even brighter, one or two whiskers that are much brighter, or where the light's just catching. Like that. Same with here. Right, the light's just there like that. There is a nice whiskery little thing now. I tell you what it is very hard at the moment to do. When you're doing these little instructional paintings and you're talking all the way through like I am doing now, it's extremely hard not to sound like Bob Ross. he was the first, of course, to do all this, and well, it's just very hard to do something that he didn't do. He was a master at his technique. Good old Bob. Certainly taught a lot of people to paint. He didn't teach me to paint, by the way, but I thoroughly enjoyed watching him. I am completely self-taught, and the way I taught myself was just watching and looking at paintings and seeing how people did them, how the old masters painted. And I did a lot of research. I spent years, if not decades, studying the old masters' techniques and the methods and the materials that they used. And eventually some of it hopefully rubs off. Right, just wash that brush. And there we have a hare. So that's it, folks. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's hare. I hope some of you have been painting along. You've seen how I will change a photograph that I'm painting from. I won't paint exactly the same as the photograph. You've got to know how to change things, to make it your own, to alter things. And one of the ways one of the things you need to know to do that, of course, is anatomy. If you're going to move things on an animal, you need to know the anatomy of an animal, of that particular animal. So get studying those anatomy books, biology books, natural history. It's a wonderful thing. There's a whole world of it out there for you to paint. It's wonderful. Now, in the next videos, I'm thinking of doing some instructional little videos on just painting normal things like trees, shrubs, bushes, water, rivers, rocks, stuff like that, gate posts, and just see if anybody's interested in that. So in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed this. My name's been John Silver. If you like it, what you've seen, pop along to my John Silver Fine Arts Facebook page and give me a like. Hope you like the Facebook page, and I shall see you next time. Bye, folks.